So, just for a study in contrasts, I'm going from William Beckford's Vathek, which I just reviewed, um, and I guess which is probably one of the. I mean, I review some pretty obscure things, and this is probably one of the more obscure things that I've talked about lately, to a novel that it seems like, everyone here on BookTube has talked about, or has expressed an interest to read, or wants to review, sort of like a rite of passage for a lot of people on here. And I ran across it the other day at a book sale. I think I showed it to you guys in a book haul, and I thought, well, I'll just take it with me to Baltimore and I'll read it there. It's Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. And I'm pretty glad I decided to take it. It's quite a novel. I actually started writing this review about 100 pages before I was done with it. Not because I couldn't finish the novel or didn't want to finish it, but because I thought I would forget too many of the things that I actually wanted to mention in the body of the review. So obviously Richard Yates has received quite the resurgence and interest recently. I don't know if that interest has been as much in the critical community as it has in the BookTube community, but it's definitely there here. Online amateur book reviewers like us, and I mean, judging solely from Revolutionary Road alone, it's really well deserved. And I've heard other people. I know someone on Goodreads, for example, who also said that The Easter Parade was really quite a fine novel too. So I might have to go and hunt down all of these things. So this is going to have a few spoilers, but hopefully not many. So keep that in mind. The lives of its two central characters, the married couple, April and Frank Wheeler, are really just dripping with this tragic irony that's uniquely American, and at least it seems to me, even though I've heard about folks from across the pond reading this novel and saying that they sympathize and empathize with April and Frank just as much as any American reader might have. But really this sort of deep tragic irony. In fact, it sort of reminded me of a modern retelling of something that you would have read in Euripides or Sophocles. The entire novel really is an investigation into the different modes of irony that really deeply infiltrate even the most intimate part of April and Frank's lives. I mean, even their names. I mean, April and Frank. What two names could better sort of sum up and express the blunting dullness of the hope springs eternal optimism of the 50s in which this novel is set. It's set in 1955. From the very first page, however, Yates is really single-minded in his goal to have the reader see that this optimism is simply an illusion. It's just a sham. On the first page, we learn that April is an aspiring actress who has been relegated, much to her chagrin, to a suburban amateur theater group. When her co-actors' weak performances disappoint her in a production that they put on, she goes home to take it out on her husband, who at first seems, at least to me, he seems like a model of forbearance, putting up with hours of her icy silent treatment, but who eventually himself admittedly grows to be every bit as cruel and calculating as April does. To support them, Frank has taken a middle manager job in the same technology company where his father used to work. And for whatever reason, the author never really makes it clear, both Frank and April think that success and everything that they deserve is really just right around the next corner. They've convinced themselves that, these mindless drones that that work with Frank in the technology firm, they don't feel the same way we do. They don't think the same way we do. They don't know the same kinds of things we do. Basically, we're just better than they are, and we deserve happiness in a different way than they do. They just think they're sort of these silly, lowly, brown-nosing ladder climbers, and they even secretly hold this really smug sense of superiority toward their neighbors, who are also their best friends and who they're visiting with all the time. Yates is really masterful at describing the really profound changes that take place between the time when Frank's father worked at the tech company, and they seem to be like pioneers in computing. They created adding machines, and they also I know it's in the 50s, which is way before the time of anything we would recognize as a personal computer, but that's what they seem to be in the business of. He really tries to go out of his way to tell you the differences between when Frank's father worked there and now. How much more alienating it is now. How much more automated things are now. How much less of a human feeling there is in the business. Frank's father always worked hard and was always tired. But he seemed satisfied. He was a company man and was probably really proud and happy to be identified as a company man. Frank, 20 years later, does nothing but, Yates says he does nothing but sit and collect his check. He does really no hard work. And because he does no hard work, he's not satisfied. His job gives him no sense of internal gratification. And moreover, Frank is disgusted by the sort of corporate business mentality that pervades the whole place, that has sort of spread like an amoeba since his father's time. But Yates wants you to see that the corporate workplace definitely has become, like I said, more alienating, but I think he also wants to show the healthy and unhealthy ways there are to accommodate that alienating sense of the workplace. And Frank's attitude of seeing it as only a place where you spend 40 hours a week and do as little as possible and pick up your paycheck on the way out is one of the unhealthy ways. Frank and April either refuse, or maybe perhaps they're just incapable of discovering what they need for themselves and what is going to make them happy. If there could be anything like one clear, distinct message to be taken away from this novel, it's that meaning, what you want to do with your life, the worth of your relationships, what makes life worth living for you, is never simply handed to you. This sort of artisan crafted thing on a silver platter. It's never that way. You have to build it yourself. You have to make it with your own hands. Meaning is something that we must continually weave for ourselves out of our personal needs, passions, drives, desires. Waiting for it to arrive means it never will. And that ultimately is the tragedy for April and Frank. A really, really spectacular novel, much better than I thought it would be. Richard Yates' Revolutionary Road.